Thanks, Tank.
Well done.
Thank you. I want you to give me a fresh beer.
You serious?
Now! Now! Holy son, you son of a bitch!
Hello, welcome into the Beer 30 Dynasty Football Podcast, where we drink and we know Dynasty. On the mic with us today, we got Brendan Wade. Oh, and he is muted. What? How unprofessional. How unprofessional.
I forgot you muted me. My fault. What's going on, everybody?
And back with us again for another week is Grant.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen.
No special guest this week as we break down the AFC North, and we've got quite a bit of news to get to, so let's go ahead and head straight on into that.
Look, I report the news. That's what I do.
First little bit of information is Jordan Addison was not driving too fast this time. He was completely stopped and arrested for suspicion of drunk driving, found asleep at the wheel. Man, these wide receivers just need to just not have cars. The NFL should just have like a rule that they're not allowed to drive. Just give everyone a personal driver, honestly, at this point, because it's just getting bad.
Don't they have some service they can call and get rides? I'm pretty sure that's a thing that teams offer.
Or Uber. I think they have enough money for an Uber.
Nope, we're just going to pull over the side of the road, pass out.
Just going to take a little nap here. I'm just going to have a nap. Okay, well, we'll see how this all unfolds. We'll follow along with it.
Smells like a discount to me.
It very well could be, but he could see some time after all of these people. And he got in trouble last year for speeding down. He said he was trying to help his dog that time, and this time he does not have that excuse on his side. Next is a little bit of pup information. So a lot of people started off on the pup for their training camps. We've got Chris Olave, Mike Williams, Jordan Travis, Keaton Mitchell, Tucker Kraft, and Theo Johnson all placed on the pup list to start their training camps, and Ricky Pearsall was placed on the non-football injury list. I think the real big surprising one on that one was Chris Olave. That one just kind of came from nowhere. I think a lot of these other guys were kind of expected, maybe not Jordan Travis as much. He broke his leg at the end of the college season last year, so you'd think he'd be back. But main one's Chris Olave is just kind of what's going on. So something just to follow along here. All those other guys have been kind of long-term injuries. So we'll just keep an eye on it and see where he comes off the pup and when he starts reporting to training camp and kind of what's going on with it.
I don't know how much of a difference this makes, but Olave was actually placed on the NFI, non-football injury. So it sounded like it was just back tightness, and yeah, seems like he'll be fine by camp or sometime during camp.
All right. Well, there you have it. Next bit of information is Daniel Jones will be active for the training camp. I think at this point, this man needs it to save his job. So tore the ACL, coming off the ACL tear this year. Do you have a lot of hope for him this year at all, Wade?
I mean, no, because I don't believe in him particularly much. But I think if anything, I mean, we all saw it coming, but Drew Lock's going to get his shot to see what he can do, I think, at least somewhat. But I'm sure they'll still try to give Daniel Jones every chance he can to earn and keep his job.
You don't believe in him like he's like Santa Claus or something?
Correct. Yeah, he doesn't exist. He's very
not
dust.
Daniel Jones does exist. I can tell you that. I'm sure there's multiple of them out there.
His ACL does not.
His ACL does not, though.
I do think he is one of those guys that's so disgusting to people that he is a value at this point, though. I mean,
I would agree with that.
He was QB9 the last time he played a full season, and that was only with 15 passing touchdowns.
Well,
so
he has, and they added Malik Neighbors on for him this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as long as he has his job, I think there's some value to be had there. Now that is maybe a big if, but shall see.
Following the money, he if he is cut from the team next year, it's like a $30 million dead cap on the team. And I mean, teams aren't as afraid these days to just eat that money, but still, that's a lot of money just for the Giants to eat to get rid of him. So there's a possibility that we could see him even if he has, just a mediocre year. But we'll find out about mid-season on if they bench him for old Drew Lock there. All right, next bit of information. And it is just absolutely annoying at this point of the season, but we got to say it. It's literally been the talk of all summer. Brandon Ayuk has officially requested a trade after unsuccessful extension attempts, and the long-term extension deadline has now passed. So he's wanting to trade. I think he plays in San Fran this year. They're trying to win it. We'll see how it unfolds or if he tries to hold out, but the fines are insane anymore for holding out, and he doesn't get paid, and it just doesn't work out if you hold out anymore. So we'll kind of see what it goes on with it.
Yeah, once upon a time, Deebo Samuel requested a trade too, and Deebo Samuel is still on the San Francisco 49ers. So that's kind of my expectation.
Same here.
And I've got a little note here that says Wade's got breaking news.
I do have some breaking news for the pod. Not fantasy related, but I figure this would be the perfect way to tell you guys. Colton, I will be joining you in fatherhood as of 2025.
Whoa! Hey, congratulations!
Thank you,
man.
thank you.
Congrats. We'll navigate the whole time off. You only get like a week for paternity leave, so just
appreciate it.
Just
yeah,
so
yeah.
you know, that is gonna be it's gonna be seasons that we're gonna be going strong. So hopefully hopefully you just take the right week off, buddy.
Yeah, could be a Super Bowl Sunday, so we'll see what happens.
Ooh. Well, congrats, Wade. That's awesome news, man.
Thank you, appreciate it.
That might be the most consequential news we've had since we started this pod, which I don't know if it means it's that big or it's been that slow, but congrats nevertheless.
Thank you. I was like, hey, you know what? How am I going to tell the guys? This feels like a perfect time to do it, and what a way to go on the pod.
Oh, well, that is very exciting, man. It's a great time. As you can see, my eye is all red and swollen from a virus from my children. So you have looking forward to never having another healthy week of your life, because apparently kids just bring home everything.
That sounds great.
Yeah, it's just awesome. Sorry for all the YouTube viewers out there that have to look at my nasty left eye here. It's just going to be watering throughout the whole thing, just profusely.
Just you got to describe it for all the non-YouTube viewers.
No one wants this description. No one wants that description. Grant's trying to eat too, so he just has to stare at it as he's eating his pizza. All right, well, don't forget to follow us on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, at Beer30Football, and you can follow me at FFCaptain22. These two need to get an actual football account so I can force them upon there. They run our Twitter account, so basically if you're following the Twitter account, you're following these two yahoos. So, all right, let's go ahead and break down the AFC North, shall we? I'll break it down first with the good old Baltimore Ravens. We'll start it from the top here. I think the only quarterback worthy noteworthy is Lamar Jackson. Pretty simple. He's one of the top quarterbacks. It's going to be, it's just impossible to just look at him and say, hey, I'm not going to play him this week. He's someone that you can plug in every single week, in and out. It doesn't matter. You're going to play him. There is, there's a little more hopeful upside. I think we talked about it last week going into the second year of Todd Monken's offense. He could settle in a little bit more. We did see a little bit more passing out of them last year. I believe was his highest passing attempts last year, and passing yards. So passing yards 3,678. And that was his highest yarded totalage in his whole entire career. So that's pretty exciting to see out of Baltimore. They're starting to get some weapons with Zay Flowers. They did lose Derrick Henry in the offseason at running back. He wasn't much of a pass catching back anyways. So not a whole lot of targets going away. He should have Mark Andrews back for the whole season. So I think high hopes just for Lamar Jackson and coming back off of another MVP season, just scoring more points for fantasy.
Yeah, I think it's Lamar. I think it's just kind of a book it thing with his rushing upside and then even more passing volume coming, and might have the best offense he's had around him yet so far. And Derrick Henry incoming is going to take even more of a load off of him potentially. So I think you're all arrows pointing up there.
Yeah, Derrick Henry's coming in. I think I said not having Derrick Henry. But what Derrick Henry coming in and not a pass catching back, he did lose his pass catching back in Keaton Mitchell. I mean, Gus Bus did leave them in the offseason, and he didn't catch passes either. So not a big deal. But the big thing is they do get Derrick Henry, which I think could eat some of Lamar Jackson's, rushing upside. I don't think it's going to be a huge chunk out of it, but I think we saw what they did last year is they didn't want to run Lamar as much because we are seeing season after season of him getting hurt towards the end when they're trying to make a playoff push. So I think they're going to try to save him a little bit more and just, run King Henry. So there's a possibility he eats in a little bit, but it's not enough to really matter.
Yeah, I mean, they have zero reason not to just run Henry absolutely into the ground. I mean, they're pretty much only committed to 1 year. Obviously, he's 30 at this point. And they're competing. There's nothing to save him for. So, yeah, I think just on pure volume alone, Henry's going to get there this year. I mean, you can pretty much book 10 touchdowns, I would say.
Yeah. I think where Henry's massive upside is in his touchdown. I mean, Gus Edwards had, I think, 15 in this offense last year, which is just absolute insanity. Let me fact check myself, but I know it was a lot. But King Henry is just going to come in there and absolutely dominate. And the fact that John Harbaugh, man, those stupid John and Jim. Harbaugh came out and said that there's no reason that King Henry can't keep up with the attempts that he had last year. And last year he was at 280. So the fact that they're saying that he can still keep that, it's just going to be absolute massive upside with running him. And sorry, Grant did fact check me. It was 13, but still insane. If Gus Bus can get 13 touchdowns, I think Derrick Henry can get 13. All right, we'll keep moving on, though. Keaton Mitchell, like we just talked about him with the news, he did start on the PUP list. Was he an ACL tear last year?
He was, at least, and there might have been at least another ligament in there as well. It was not pretty, that's for sure.
Yeah, he kind of came out pretty hot. A lot of people were big on him, especially mid-season. He was starting to show flashes of him having some juice. I just have a feeling that if he doesn't come back this year and doesn't perform right away, it could be the end of his career already. I mean, he was a late-round draft pick. They owe him nothing. They drafted Rasheen Ali, which I like. He's a pretty explosive guy too. So rookie coming in there to back up Derrick Henry. I mean, it's going to be the Derrick Henry show probably 8 times out of 10. So it's going to be mainly that. But Rasheen Ali is just someone to kind of have on your radar. Henry is a little bit older. Keaton Mitchell, I don't foresee coming back, and when he does, I don't think he's gonna take a minute to return to form if he ever gets the chance. So Rasheen Ali could kind of run away with this. Another back just to kind of touch on, and it's Justice Hill. A lot of people had high hopes for Justice Hill last year when J.K. Dobbins got injured, and there was a possibility he could come in. He had 84 attempts with 387 yards, and they're like, oh, he's a receiving back. He's receiving yet. He's had 39 targets, 28 receptions, which isn't horrible, but without the rushing ability and the receiving ability, he's not worth much.
I feel like we've done like 3 years in a row of, whoever the Ravens lead back should be gets hurt, and everybody's like, oh, Justice Hill's the guy. He's big, fast, can catch, and then it just never really materializes. So I think can safely just forget about him.
Yeah, it definitely is one to just go ahead and cut him. You can cut him off your team. He's not going to do anything else on anyone else's rosters. So unless you're in like a super deep league and people start blowing up knees in Baltimore, I think Justice Hill is kind of irrelevant. But for the wide receiver core, last year Zay Flowers kind of came in a little bit slow at the beginning of the season, but man, did he pick up hot towards the end of the year. He is a smaller, plays the slot kind of guy, but he did, he showed a lot of flashes and that he is a capable wide receiver. And the fact that there's not a lot of receiving options, just makes Zay Flowers even more. I mean, he's their obvious wide receiver one. He's definitely surpassed Rashad Bateman to me, especially towards with his performance towards the end of the year. Week 12 looks like it was when he really started to pick it up. He finished wide receiver 6, 8 targets, 5 receptions. Week 14 after bye week, wide receiver 8, 10 targets, 6 receptions. So kind of came on strong towards the end of the year. I mean, during their divisional or their conference game against KC, he obviously was making some rookie mistakes out there. He drew a flag. He was making some, not great choices on routes and stuff like that. So he definitely had some growing up, and as long as this year he just shows a little bit more maturity, I think there's a good possibility you can see some solid upside with Zay Flowers, and I think he is a little bit higher than my liking, kind of where he's going. Um, he is currently sitting at the wide receiver 20, and there's just some people behind him that I prefer a little bit more. DK Metcalf, Tank Dell, T. Higgins are all there. I think they have just as much upside, if not more, with them. But how do you guys feel about Zay Flowers?
I think I'm taking all those guys you just listed over him. I talked before about how I'm just not a big fan of the small receivers, so I gotta practice what I preach. I'm taking all those guys before him.
Yeah, I mean, not necessarily concerned about his size. To me, it's just that he's more, he's a low ADOT, like not crazy high volume and a not crazy high volume passing offense. So just all those things, he's really got to hit it big to be productive week in and week out. And especially, last year he got a lot of those touchdowns in games where Mark Andrews wasn't playing. So could definitely see some regression there. I think wide receiver 20-ish is probably about where he's going to still finish. So, but yeah, I mean, as Wade said, I would easily take all those other guys listed over him.
Yeah, his ADOT was 8.4. So, I mean, it's better than what I thought it was going to be, but he was one of those guys that it was either like way downfield or it was just super close to the line of scrimmage. Like there was kind of no in between with him.
Yeah, I mean, 8.4 is fine if you're an offense that's slinging it around the yard and you can get that solid 8 to 10 targets a game, but it's just not consistently always going to be there for him.
Yeah, I could see him getting at least 1,000 yards though this year. I mean, coming into his second year, but it's still, I mean, with where he's going in a startup, it's kind of hard for me to look at him. If he falls, I would take him, and he's definitely a serviceable option. Someone I'd want as a wide receiver too, because he does have some potential, some potential upside to him. But we'll keep moving to the old wide receiver 2 on this team, and that's Rashad Bateman. Grant and I actually just made a trade with Rashad Bateman. I couldn't get anyone to take him off my team, and so I offered up I think it was my 4th back to get Rashad Bateman off my team. I've had so much hope year in and year out from Rashad Bateman, and it just I don't understand why it doesn't work. Do you guys get why it doesn't work? Because I don't get
it. Injuries mostly, and also just the volume of the Ravens passing offense, but yeah, mostly injuries, I think. I mean, because he, like Matt Herman's reception perception really still loves him, route tree wise and success rate wise. When he's actually played, he has all the makings of what should be a prototypical kind of wide receiver 1, X receiver. And we kind of saw it at the beginning of last year, I guess that was. He had a couple big games, on some kind of big plays when the Ravens offense was really just came out of the gates hot throwing the ball. But yeah, for me, I'm willing to still, for a cheap price, just roll the dice on him because I think, he's more talented than any guy you could draft in the 4th round, that receiver this year or next. But I think this is definitely make or break for him this year.
Yeah, and another problem with Rashad Bateman, and like I'm looking at his metrics, he had 56 targets, 32 receptions. His catch percentage is only 57.1%. So even some of the balls that went his way, he just was dropping them. Like he wasn't catching them. So it's just the fact that he's not. He gets open. Like there's times like you see on some of the videos, like he is wide open, and him and Lamar Jackson just aren't connected. But then I don't know if Lamar Jackson just doesn't trust him because in years past, I mean, last year his catch percentage was 53.6. The year prior, his rookie season, he was 67.6, which was awesome. But somewhere just that trust was lost, and they just don't go to Rashad Bateman.
Well, I also think that offense just doesn't make it super easy, like for outside receivers. Like some offenses, they can easily get targets to these guys, but they're not a short passing offense, really. I mean, Zay Flowers gets plenty of screens and stuff close to the line, but it's just hard. I think for him, a lot of the times it was either something downfield, contested potentially, or nothing. And it's hard to really get, consistent receptions when that's kind of all it is.
Yeah, I mean, if you can get him like you did Grant cheap for a fourth, I mean, that's just a toss up. He was a first round draft pick, so just getting him like super cheap because people are just giving him up like me at this point. They just want him off their roster, get a new fresh start. Where the snag there, he may even be on waivers at this point, honestly, depending on how deep your league is. I don't think these guys are really talking worthy, but I'll just go ahead and say their names. Wide receiver 3 is Nelson Aguilar, and then a late round rookie, Devontae Walker. A lot of people were kind of big on him, coming pre-draft. He fell in the draft. I think he ended up going like 6th round maybe. He's a field stretcher. He might have, if he's a best ball option, he could have a game where he blows up, but Lamar Jackson isn't like one just to chuck it down the field a whole lot. So I don't see a whole lot of options in kind of either one of these guys.
He went in the 4th round.
He went 4th round?
He did. Yep.
Oh, wow. That's actually quite shocking. I think he was projected like a 2nd round pre-draft, and everyone's like, oh, Devontae Walker looks great, and then fell to the 4th. I really thought he fell farther. Thanks for fact checking me, guys, today.
I gotcha.
I'm needing it. My eyes not allowing me to think is really what it is. It's not allowing me to access my knowledge. Let's talk about the number 1 receiving option in this offense, and that's good old Mark Andrews. Spent a lot of the season last year injured. He was out from weeks, let's see. Man, my thing just reset on me.
12 through the rest of the year.
Was it 12 through the rest of the year?
Yeah, he got hurt in week 11.
So, yeah, he was out for a while. I think he did come back for the playoffs.
He played for the conference, against Kansas City.
Yeah, I mean, he is the number 1 receiving option for Lamar Jackson. He works like the intermediate of the field. He is literally Lamar Jackson's instant number 1 target. He looks for him right away. They have a good communication. There's just no one else I would be. He's my number 1 option for if I'm going to target anyone in this receiving core, it's going to be him. He still is only 28 years old. So, I mean, a lot of people are down on him. They've got, Trey McBride, Dalton Kincaid. They've got Sam Laporta all above him. And I think he's sitting there right at tight end 4 or 5 for most people. Depending on, if it's a tight end premium league, there's worth a shot of if trying to trade one of those guys and getting Mark Andrews plus that I think you could get. And that's a chance I would take on too, because I think Mark Andrews has some serious upside as long as he can stay healthy for this offense.
Yeah, and on the, you're talking about targeting him, the only person you want to target in that offense. For me, it's very similar to how Travis Kelce's been over the past couple of years since Tyreek left. Is just that's the one guy that pretty much where he's going in drafts, you feel comfortable taking him because the targets are going to be there.
Yeah, back in 2021 when he was completely healthy, I mean, he was targeted 153 times and 107 receptions. So if he can stay healthy, I mean, he's just going to be the target monster in this offense.
Yeah, I mean, he literally missed half the season pretty much, and he was still like tight end 15 overall this year. Like he would have easily been top 5 if he maintained the pace that he's on. So, yeah, I don't think there should be any real concerns there outside of injury.
Yeah, and had 6 touchdowns over 10 games. I mean, that's just insane.
Yeah, and then there's another tight end in Baltimore that I really like. Like we said, Mark Andrews was injured week 11, so Isaiah Likely came in, and I think he did a formidable job. Like he looked awesome. You know, they have 2 fantastic tight ends, and I could honestly see them this year playing more 2 tight end sets because of how good Isaiah Likely looked. I mean, he came in week 12, finishes the tight end 19, not great. But then after their bye week, when he was actually being able to practice, get first team reps, finishes the tight end 3, tight end 5, then 23, but then 2 and 10. I mean, for someone that just came in to back up Mark Andrews, I think he did awesome. I think he could be a solid. He's definitely a handcuff right now, but if they start playing 2 tight end sets, I could see him being a little bit more fantasy relevant. And then if he is to move on from Baltimore, he would be an instant super hot target for me.
I think he's probably about maybe not the only, but damn near the only tight end I would consider buying for having a handcuff for, just because the value's there for what he can get. I mean, the games where Andrews was out last year, he put up 24, 23, 11, 20, 13, and another 13, and a 12 in there. I mean, so if you can get him for, a 3rd or 4th rounder just to have a handcuff, I think that's worth it, especially in tight end premium.
It's not even the numbers with him, too. I mean, the numbers are great, but he just looked good. He looked like he belonged, like out on the football field, and he was just ripping it up. So it's just he's a great option for handcuff for now, and then for future's sake, if he can get, if he can get on a different team, it would be just awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's a shame that the Ravens had to be the one to draft him. I mean, it was probably good insurance for them, but they like to do that. They, last year they kind of a sleeper tight end prospect, Charlie Kolar, they drafted that a lot of people liked, which made even less sense since they already had 2 relevant tight ends. So they really just like hoarding all these fun tight ends away from people. But yeah, I mean, I think there's only one true tight end handcuff that exists, as Wade said, it's definitely him.
All right, let's go ahead and get talking about those Bengals, huh, Grant?
Yeah, so obviously last year, big disappointment for them coming off of a Super Bowl berth. But, I think obviously marred by injury, especially to Joe Burrow, and it's definitely dropped his price down some, which I think everybody should be taking advantage of. Are we really worried about a pocket quarterback continually getting hurt? I mean, I know it's kind of happened 2 seasons with him now, but it's been kind of freak things. And when he's healthy, truly healthy, not just playing, because he tried to play through some stuff this year, but there was a couple week stretch there where it finally looked like he was back good again. And he was QB4, QB6, QB7 in those games, and maybe not even fully healthy. And then he, injures the hand, and that's it for him. But he's only 27. Still has all the weapons. I'm still all the way in on him. I guess Jake Browning is not a bad super flex handcuff to have for him because he was productive in that system. So I guess if you can find a way, if you own him, to get Browning for super cheap, it's probably a worthwhile investment. Biggest probably departure for them is Joe Mixon at running back. He's been a staple there for a long time. Even maybe when some people are ready to move on from him, he was still just racking up points. Got drafted Chase Brown last year. He showed a couple flashes, and then the big addition, signing of Zach Moss. I think Moss is the best bet there, just because he's going to get the goal line work. But are you guys? How are you feeling about that backfield? Are there any Chase Brown fans?
The fact that we said Zach Moss big addition is just entertaining to me because it was just like, man, Zach Moss couldn't get it done in Buffalo. Comes in to be Jonathan Taylor's backup. Jonathan Taylor is injured, holding out essentially. And Zach Moss just absolutely cooked, man. He looked so good. And he looked so good that he got paid by the Bengals. I mean, it's not nothing they gave him. And I mean, it wasn't like a bag, but he got paid pretty good to come in there, and he's going to be their number one option. I'm not a big Chase Brown believer. The biggest thing I've got with Chase Brown is just they gave him small opportunity last year, and I just don't think he took advantage of it like at all. I mean, he had 44 attempts and 179 yards, and he just didn't look good. He looked slow, and he was supposed to be kind of an explosive guy. And so I'm not big on Chase Brown. I think Zach Moss is going to come in here and kind of take over this backfield.
I would agree somewhat. I think Moss is probably the guy you're gonna want there, but I think maybe you can get a pretty good discount on Chase Brown. And if something was to break a certain way, you got him for potentially nothing with the signing there. I mean, Zach Moss, like you were saying, he got a 2-year, $8 million deal. Looks like. I'm not sure what the guarantees are on that, but like I said, it's not nothing, but it's not overly whatever. But they obviously didn't feel comfortable enough just letting Chase Brown have the job, so they went out and got Moss for a reason. So that'd be my guy there, is just to roll with Moss after what did last year in Indy.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on Jake Browning real quick, and I think I don't know how good of an actual quarterback he was last year. Everyone was like, "Oh man, he did great filling in for Burrow." Do you want to take a guess on what his average depth of target was?
Low, I would guess.
6.4. It was so much of, hey, let's throw the ball to Jamar Chase on this line of scrimmage and pray to God that he can do something with this ball. That's essentially what it was. I mean, he's fine to have a handcuff, I guess, if you have to have one, but I mean, don't expect him to come in and be fantastic like he was last year, because eventually teams are going to figure it out if Joe Burrow were to go down again. But man, I saw that stat and I was just like, 6.4 is just terrible.
But I think that may almost be, well, hopefully it's not repeatable because he's just not playing, but just because he's in, the value with him is he's being plugged into a great offense if he has to come in with that has legitimate playmakers where even if he's not really doing anything, they can still kind of carry him. And there's a little bit of rushing upside there too, I guess. He's one of those guys where I'm not sure he's fast, but he tries to run, so that at least gets you something there. But
the old Chase Daniel effect.
I was about to call it the Brandon Wade.
Well, that's just hurtful. I never played quarterback. Can't be me.
All right, let's talk about these wide receivers.
Yeah, I mean, Jamar Chase, he's still consensus top 3 guy. I mean, I think there's maybe, he's kind of probably slipped with the rise of CD Lamb and his, just the lack of Joe Burrow last year, but he can give you the kind of blow up games that very few can. And you get Burrow back in there and the floor is back as well. So he's going to be right back in that top 5 mix. I think T. Higgins is the one that we've had the most convo about this offseason. He's playing on the franchise tag this year. He's going to be there. I think you slot him right in to where he's always been. We know where he has weekly upside to be top 10 at any point, but there is going to be a low floor. But you just kind of got to play it for the variance. And, I think he's probably a buy just for the fact that people are disappointed that he didn't go be a number 1 guy somewhere else via trade. So I think there's a window that then, people see, oh, he's just wide receiver 2 again. But, we liked the production he gave us in that spot before. So I think there's no reason to be scared of that now. And then behind there you got, biggest other additions, Jermaine Burton. I definitely like the upside there. I think a lot of people are maybe almost prematurely slotting him in as wide receiver 3. He's definitely got the best draft capital, but I would still look out for, Andre Ishavas and Charlie Jones that were both drafted last year just because they have a little more experience. Ishavas did catch a couple touchdowns here and there with the injuries last year, and both those guys actually are great athletes as well as Burton is, but just off the pure talent and draft capital, that should be Burton's job eventually at some point this year.
My real question is, I know T. Higgins also had his injuries last year, but I think part of why we saw such a crappy season from him last year is the fact that Jake Browning was his quarterback for a lot of the time. I know we were just talking about how Jake Browning's ADOT was average depth of target was 6.4. Well, here is over the last 4 seasons for T. Higgins, here's his ADOT, 11.5, 12.1, 10.9, 12.8. He runs the intermediate to deep part of the field. So if he doesn't have a quarterback that can get it to him, just kind of like Jake Browning was, they're not going to go to him as much. So that could be a huge part as to why T. Higgins had such another down year, is the fact that they just didn't have the quarterback to get it to him.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the low ADOT is in part. Jake Browning legitimately has one of the worst, arm strength arms in the NFL. I mean, it was that way going back to college at Washington. And where T. Higgins really makes his money is those, deep, kind of sideline contested throws that Joe Burrow can make. I mean, last year he still, in what was a down year, had 4 top 10 finishes, and that's with missing 5 games and really 6 because week 1, this is even with Joe Burrow, he had 8 targets for 0 receptions and 0 yards, which is absurd. But that shows, Burrow is just not in a right place to even start the season. I think, the games where he went off, we're talking, 28, 25, 22 points. That's especially if he's like your, third wide receiver for some teams, or at least your second. That's all you can ask for, really. And then hopefully the floor will be back in a better Joe Burrow-led offense.
I've been buying up a lot of T. Higgins this offense. I bought a lot of T. Higgins. In the one game that him and Joe Burrow were both healthy together, like both of them fully looked like they were coming back to it, was week 9, where he was the wide receiver 8. He had 9 targets, 8 receptions, 110 yards. No touchdowns, but still, he was a wide receiver 8 without a touchdown. So the fact that he can do that, he just has a quarterback that can get it to him in that intermediate to deep. And as long as him and Joe Burrow can stay healthy this year, I think we're going to see a pretty big season once again out of T. Higgins.
And I think he's someone, you talked about it earlier about possibly getting moved elsewhere. I think a lot of people were holding out hope he might end up in Houston to pair with C.J. Stroud and really be the number 1 there. Obviously, that ship has sailed, so there might be a lot of people who are possibly down on him for that reason, obviously, and the injuries and Burrow not being there last year, coming off that. What he finished like wide receiver 51. Not that I don't think that's indicative of him by any means. But I think you got the window to buy.
And then finally, tight end position. I feel like people have been chasing this with the Bengals forever now. Joe Burrow's tight end, you can get him cheap. That's going to be something. And we've seen many guys. There was Irv Smith hype going into last year. How'd that go? And the newest victim of that is Mike Gesicki, who has had his own hype on other teams. Last year there was going into New England. And I've been burned on it before, so I'm probably not going to again. I think there could be something there, especially the departure of Tyler Boyd. You got young guys as that wide receiver 3. Gesicki is really a receiver. He is classified as tight end, but you want to have him, and you do not want to have him with his hand in the dirt at all. You want him in the slot. So I think there could be some potential there, especially early on, for him to have some decent games, but I just don't see how there's a lot of week-to-week potential there. On the rest of the depth chart, you have Tanner Hudson, who had some okay games last year towards the end, but I think that was product of the Jake Browning dump-off factory. And really other one of note, which maybe could break through to be, the main one is Eric All, who was drafted in the 4th round this year. Kind of an interesting prospect, got some decent athleticism, but probably one of those guys that you're not going to see much from year one, as you do with most tight ends. So really it's probably just something that you shouldn't chase. But if you can get Mike Gesicki for bottom barrel cheap, I would at least throw that dart, because you never, as a essentially slot receiver in a Joe Burrow offense, there could be something there.
I honestly didn't even know Gesicki was on this team until like 2 weeks ago. I was like, when did that happen? I thought he was still just chilling on New England, honestly.
I remember after that, what he had finished like tight end like 8 or something that year in Miami. He had like 2 years in a row. Everybody thought he was gonna be like the next tight end, and then that just vanished rather quickly. I knew he signed here, but I honestly totally forgot about him. And I'm with you, Grant. If you can get him for bottom of the barrel, if he's out there on the waiver wire, or you can throw, say, you got a real late 4th out there, and you can try to buy him up for that, it might be worth the dart throw on that for what you're going to get at that value.
So yeah, at the very least, he's going to have red zone value. I mean, that's
right.
Always been one of his big calling cards.
I promise, guys, I'm not tearing up about Mike Gesicki. It's just my eye. It looks like I'm crying about it. All right. Well, we made it halfway through, so let's go ahead and let's do it.
I want to ask you a bunch of questions, and I want to have them answered immediately.
All right, guys, we're gonna play a fun little game again, like we did a couple weeks back. I've got the leading passer ratings from last year. I'm going to give you guys the top 5, and I want you to rank them in order, okay? So we've got Lamar Jackson, Kirk Cousins, Dak Prescott, Tua Tagovailoa, and Brock Purdy. What do you guys think the order is?
Oh, wow. That's tough, because they're all...
What a shocking top 5, too.
But to me, it's not, because, passer rating is definitely influenced by completion percentage a lot. It's definitely helped by guys that can get you yards after the catch and just get open. And all these guys are in great offensive schemes. So that's what makes it hard to really single out somebody. I would probably say I would go with one of the Shanahan tree guys as the top 2, either Purdy or Tua. I might go with Purdy, because I know his was ridiculous at some points.
Purdy is number 1 with 113 passer rating. The next guy comes in at 105.
Dak?
It is Dak.
Hey.
Yeah. The next one is 103.
That's got to be Tua.
It is not Tua. It is not. It is actually Kirk Cousins.
Okay.
And then the next guy is the 102, and right behind him with 101. So who's the 4 and who's the 5?
I guess I go Lamar as the lowest, just because of their offense. It's kind of designed.
Lamar is the number 4, and then it goes Tua.
Wow.
Okay. That's shocking.
I think Tua probably had enough interceptions in there, especially toward the end of the season, to kind of offset that a little.
I just saw it, and I was just shocked. I mean, I was like, I guess passer rating data, like you were saying, Grant, does a lot of that into there with all those,
especially, I think somebody like Kirk is almost one of the most impressive, or maybe even Dak, because those guys had – were just out there slinging it on a lot of attempts. I mean, Purdy was super efficient on low attempts, didn't turn it over, got a lot of yards after the catch. That's just a good formula to really rack that number up.
Yeah, I mean, Dak had the Let's see. He had the 4th most pass attempts, but he had the most passes completed last year. So just to have that with that high of a passer rating.
And I'd be curious to see that cross-referenced by ADOT as well, because I think that would really show, who's the most impressive there.
His ADOT last year would have been 7.8. So not as high as I thought, actually.
That's not bad. I mean,
Not bad, but
like
not as high as I thought.
Once you get to 8, that's pretty good, I would say.
But all right, we'll keep moving this train on. If you want to go ahead and break down the Cleveland Browns for us, Wade.
All righty. We'll start at quarterback. You got Deshaun Watson there, who has not at all, held up to expectations there. I mean, played 6 games past 2 years, obviously with the suspension in there. Quarterback 35. I mean, and obviously been injured last year too. Well, that's, I guess, debatable. Obviously, there was an injury, but whether he actually would have tried to play through it is highly debatable. I think, you can probably buy him pretty cheap, but I'm not sure. I still think he can get back to form, but he's just not looked the same at all since coming back. I mean, almost 2 years off is a lot to come back and get back into speed. So maybe there's a chance that he's still only 28 that he can get back in there. But I don't know if you're going to see ever that top 5 3 years in a row again. I just don't know if it's going to happen. But behind him, you got, Jameis Winston, I think, could be a very good backup there. I mean, you saw what Flacco did when he came in last year, and Jameis is just going to get in there. If he gets in there, he's going to sling it. I mean, that's what he does. I mean, he's going to throw touchdowns, and he's going to throw a lot of picks. But he's going to also throw a lot of touchdowns. So, I mean, I think he's somebody that you could potentially pick up on the waiver wire or real cheap, and if Watson does go down, which history has shown that he will. I think that'd be somebody you could definitely get interested in there. What are you guys thinking on the whole Watson situation?
You're a fan of Watson, aren't you, Wade?
I mean, I liked him coming out of college. Obviously, maybe not a very good dude, but
I think a great dude, man. Just a great dude.
just,
Someone I'd want to go get a couples massage with.
We're canceled now. It's over. Fun while lasting, fellas.
Honestly, though, so that game against Baltimore, I think he actually looked like he was starting to return to the Deshaun Watson of old. Like, he was slinging it. He was getting outside the pocket. He was making things happen. And that's the game that he actually, he got injured during it, like halfway through the game and did play through it. And then obviously didn't return after that. But honestly, I think he looked great during that game. And that was the first time you've really seen him since he's been with Cleveland actually look like he was kind of coming back to a serviceable quarterback, especially for fantasy. I mean, because the years prior that he was with Cleveland, or the year prior with Cleveland, he just looked terrible and was injured once again. So, I mean, it's just injuries, and I don't know if he just had a chance to not get comfortable in this offense, but he's just hopefully he comes back to form, and I think you could get a discount on him right now too.
Oh, absolutely. Would it surprise you guys to know that he has yet to throw for 300 yards as a Cleveland Brown?
300?
No.
He has not thrown for 300 yards.
A 300-yard game?
Not at all.
Nope.
Oh, okay.
I think his highest game was 289 yards.
289.
Yeah.
But even with that, he had 3 top 10 finishes.
He did,
in essentially 5 games last year. I mean, the rushing floor was decent. That offense is going to move the ball. And, I don't believe that someone who was he had 3 straight QB 5 overall finishes at the start of his career. I don't believe that someone like that just loses it all. I mean, I get that he sat out for almost 2 years, but the physical talent is there.
Yeah, I agree with you 1,000%. I think we talked about this, when he was coming back. There's no way he's just gonna, be this bad. And we were proved wrong so far. Now, like you just said, I don't think that that's gonna continue. it can't get any worse. I mean, if it does,
actually have him get a full runway for once. I mean, he had the suspension the first year, injuries and stuff this last year, and actually, play all the games. But I do, as you said, I do think Jameis is an interesting backup because just in the way that Flacco was, I think a lot of people noted, when Flacco was just out there slinging it at the end of the year, you don't really see quarterbacks like that anymore. In this era of the NFL, it's all about just getting the ball out there, avoiding turnovers, safe, let your playmakers do it. And Flacco is just out there chucking that thing down the field. And it resulted in some huge gains and really boosted the pass catchers. So, yeah, I think, if Watson used to be that guy, so if he can just do that, but also if something happens to him, you don't have to ask Jameis twice to throw the ball down the field like that. So
he definitely is the guy you want for like Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy, Elijah Moore, Jameis is like, because he's not afraid to chuck it. And here's the funny thing. So Deshaun Watson has only played in 12 games since 2020.
That's
12 games since
not a lot.
12 from the suspension and injury, just 12 games. All right, let's talk about the backfield, Wade.
All right, obviously, you got Nick Chubb there coming off his nasty knee injury. I mean, ACL, MCL, and meniscus. I don't know if you guys have seen the video circulating on good old X over there, him squatting like 300 damn pounds. But, I mean, he's still just a beast and getting back to work. And
I think it was 540.
Okay, even more. I mean, I knew it was a lot. I didn't want to oversell it, but
I think I saw the comment.
That does sound right. That bar was bending real bad.
On how much did you say?
I said 350, I think, and it was 5 something.
I've probably almost been not far off that.
I just
Nick Chubb.
I didn't know for sure. I didn't want to say like, oh yeah, he's squatting 700 pounds or something ridiculous. But yeah, I mean that he's my dude. I'm a big Nick Chubb fan. That knee injury was scary, and if you are worried about that, Jerome Ford proved he can do that just fine for fantasy purposes. Now I think that might be a guy you want to target. You could potentially buy for decently cheap, maybe a mid to late second, and he could be the guy for the first 6 weeks of the season if you're trying to compete until Nick Chubb comes back. I know Foreman did go there. Deontay Foreman, that is, but I don't think he's going to really take a lot of carries away from Ford until Nick Chubb gets healthy. And then, once Chubb's back, it's going to be the Nick Chubb show there. You guys got anything on those guys?
I like the fact that you said Chubb show.
All right, I'm done.
I would say, with the Chubb thing, I mean, he's definitely going to miss some time. But, a couple of years ago when Derrick Henry had his injury and he was getting older and people were like, is he done? And there was a huge camp of people who were like, it doesn't matter. He's Derrick Henry. He's just built different. And if I would put anybody else into the built different category, it would be Nick Chubb.
I agree 1,000%.
Because, he's already done this before. People thought his career may have been cooked as soon as it even started. And, it doesn't get nastier than his college knee injury. And, he went on to be like the NFL, like all-time top 5 in yards per carry. So, yeah, I think even if he doesn't get back to that, I think he can be more than viable, especially for what his price is right now. And then,
absolutely.
For Ford, he's cheap enough. I think people are discounting how much work he's going to see early in the season. And I do think that Foreman is going to eat into his goal line carries and maybe reduce the overall upside there. But Ford is definitely going to get all the passing down work.
That's what I was going to say. I think the receiving is going to make up for what he'll miss out for in between the 20s.
And he's more explosive. He can rip one for 70 at any point. We saw it a few times in the run and pass game last year. So, I think, both him and Chubb are almost valued the same right now. And, Ford might be the better bet just because he's healthy and guaranteed to see the early season work.
Yeah, that might be, I don't normally advocate for this much, but that might be somebody if you have one or the other and you can get the other one, that might be an ideal situation where you buy whoever, like if you have Chubb, you want to buy Ford to see if, you can just fill that gap until he gets back on the field.
Yeah, I mean, I have both in a league and I'm just holding because whatever value I can get for either is not worth just instead having both of them in what should be a good running offense. Is a future second really worth just locking down a Kevin Stefanski run offense?
Agreed.
Instead, I think as a contender, I'd rather just do that.
All right, moving on. Wide receivers here. Wide receiver 1, Amari Cooper. That dude, it doesn't matter who's playing quarterback. I mean, he's just going to put up 1,000 yards and put up points. Now, it might not be top 10 receiver points, but you can count on him for being top 20. And I don't know if there's really much to say about him. I mean, he is 30. But I think he's going to continue to produce until he proves me otherwise. Number 2 there, they obviously traded for Jerry Jeudy and paid him there. I actually, I think I bought a Jerry Jeudy stonk here from Grant mids or maybe at the end of this last season. I bought him for like a third after he got traded, or maybe I think that's what it was. So I don't know. I'm just kind of buying in on the upside there. I'm obviously 2 years ago he did finish wide receiver 21. Now you're hoping that Watson can get back to form if you're hoping for that. But obviously Cleveland's not an offense where they're going out there and just throw bombs all the time. They are still going to lean on that run game. But I could buy a low on him. I think the possible upside there would be worth another buy low there. Other than him, I'm not very high. I mean, I know Colton's guy Elijah Moore. I think the trade for Jerry Jeudy just kind of evaporated that. Him and Cedric Tillman both might have just got absolutely dusted.
Grant and I just had this conversation. He's no longer my guy, man. It's a big sad.
Well, just because he is not good doesn't make him not your guy.
Whoa,
you took him in like every league ever.
Shots fired. Hey, if he would have worked out, man, it would have been awesome.
You always have that
Keyword
5-game stretch with the Jets when Josh Johnson was quarterback.
Yeah.
Also in the cooked category of their other receivers is former draft favorite of mine, David Bell. Which I would say maybe, well, actually no, I would say not too fast or not so fast because I think David Bell had like a 2-touchdown game in the playoffs last year. No, sorry, week 18 last year, 4 for 68, 2 touchdowns.
Hey, I mean, he did go 8 for 8.
8 for 54 in the playoff game. But I think David Bell has to get a lot of volume for him to work out because he's not that great of an athlete. My hope for him coming into the league was to be like a budget Keenan Allen type guy, and that ship has sailed. But I think, Jeudy is a good – I could see people either selling or buying him. The people who have probably had him for a while are kind of done waiting for it to happen, so they're ready to sell. Meanwhile, the talent is still there and the opportunity. So for the price, I don't blame anybody for buying for a late second, early third either.
Yeah, I understand both sides of that. Depending on where your team's at. If you're just over it, I understand just taking what you can, and if you're buying them and you're just hoping a different landing spot and somebody can help them out, I totally understand that. But moving on to tight,
is it really going to happen in year 5? I mean, let's be honest. Do you break out year 5?
History says no, but the NFL's weird, so we shall see. Moving on to tight end here. We have talked, I think, quite a few times now about tight ends who just do nothing or have one good season and then a lot of nothings, and then all of a sudden break out. And David Njoku putting up tight end 6 last year is right along the lines with that. I think he's another one of those guys who's kind of down the board, and you could very well just gobble him up and be equal value to some of those guys you're taking several rounds higher in either startups or trading or what have you. Obviously, he's 6'4", 246. Got all that. He got speed. I mean, he was a freak athlete and highly regarded coming out for a reason. And last year, I feel like you finally got to see what that could look like, and hopefully, we can continue to see that there.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be concern about him having his real blow up with Flacco, but
1,000%.
I think really it just was because the targets. He just needs the targets. So as long as Watson can at least just funnel him, it doesn't even have to be the 8 to 10 that he was getting during that stretch, but even 5 to 6 because he said he's got the speed, he can make things happen after the catch. I mean, I just remember last year late in the season, there was a game there against the Jets, and he came out and had like 130 yards in like the first 2 quarters. So I'm like, dude, he's about to have the best tight end game ever. And then they got up, and then he didn't have the same amount of targets. But I mean, this is somebody that can just go off at any point.
Yep.
And you're still getting him much cheaper than a lot of other guys at that position.
Absolutely. I mean, so from week 4 on, except for the one game he missed and one outlier there, he had no less than 6 targets. Week 6 against San Fran, he had 4. Every other game, he had more than 6 targets. He had a 15-target game, a 14-target game in there. And they're just getting fed. So, like you said, if you can get half of that, I still think the value is way worth where you're going to get him.
Yeah, a lot of people think that the whole Deshaun Watson thing is kind of a problem. Weeks 1 through 3, when Watson was playing, he finished as tight end 28, 28, 23. And then weeks 9 and 10, when he also played with Watson, he finished as the tight end 13. But then week 10, when Watson was finally kind of coming into form, looking good against Baltimore, he finished as the tight end 7. He had 9 targets, 6 receptions for 58 yards. And so, I mean, he still got it done with Watson. It was only one game, so it's a very small sample, but he at least proved at that game that he could do it with Watson. So, I think they found out that they can trust Njoku and that he can be a go-to guy. And there's been so many interviews this year that have seen Kevin Stefanski coming out saying, yeah, we got to get the ball into this guy's hands more. So I like David Njoku a lot, especially for a cheaper tight end.
And with these other guys being a little bit unproven, there's no reason he can't just be the number 2 target on that team.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think he's probably the number, like you just said, the number 2 receiving target that I'm getting on that team.
All right, let's go ahead and break down these Steelers real quick, boys. So at the quarterback position, we got Russell Wilson and newly acquired Justin Fields. So, I mean, it's coming out. Russell Wilson's going to be the starter. Russell Wilson, everybody was kind of down on him and poo-pooing all over him. And he finished last year without even finishing the season, the 9th most passing touchdowns. He had 26. So he didn't have a bad season. The Broncos were just over it. He didn't want to run the system that Sean Payton wanted to run. They butted heads. They wanted him out of Denver. So he comes over to the Steelers, and they basically get him for free. So this year he is 100%, super cheap. He's going to have every opportunity to be the starter here, especially at the beginning of the year. I mean, and I think a lot of people are down on him as well. Everyone thinks that Justin Fields is going to come in and take his job, halfway through the season because everybody counts Russell Wilson out. But we've heard it from Grant multiple times. Justin Fields is not a great quarterback. So I could see Russ cooking for the whole year.
Yeah, I mean, he did a perfectly fine job last year on a team that was not great and a coach that actively wanted him gone. He was on the year quarterback 14, but, was regularly finishing kind of right around QB 11-ish. A lot of that off passing touchdowns, but he still had a little bit of a rushing floor in there that we thought may have been kind of gone by this point. But, yeah, in a Steelers offense that we hope is at least competent, I can't really see it being worse than the Broncos offense last year. I think, for being dirt, I mean, in startups, he goes in like round 15 plus usually, so I think use that, the threat of Justin Fields, that's not really a threat, it's just hype. Use that to take a discount on him.
Man, another slandering out there for the Justin Fields crew.
That's nothing. I got way worse, but I'll save that for. I would like him to play at least one game this year to kind of show people. I think there's been a, as there was with Mitch Trubisky. That's why the Steelers are a great proving ground to show people that former Bears quarterbacks weren't actually good anyway. It wouldn't have mattered who they played with. Because, Mitch Trubisky, that finally just forced him all the way out of the league, it looks like, and we'll see if they can go 2 for 2 there.
Hey, man, they just needed a different coaching staff and a different landing spot, and it was all going to work out.
All right, we'll move on to these running backs here. All right, Najee Harris, Jalen Warren, and the newly acquired Cordell Patterson. A lot of people are down on Najee. He's kind of fallen in drafts. I think he's going to be fine with Arthur Smith kind of coming in and taking over this offense. They did not extend him, so they came out and said they want to see who fits better between him and Warren of their new offense and kind of how it takes over. This backfield is just, it's hard to tell what they're going to do and who's going to be the one to go to. But I think Najee's going to get the between the 20s work, the grinder, and Jalen Warren's going to be the change of pace back.
Be a real shame if Arthur Smith used his favorite Cordell Patterson to completely ruin ruin these other guys, but definitely not feeling great about him being involved. But yeah, I agree. I mean, I think people are down on Najee, but he's going to grind out, a solid floor and maybe more, because we don't know how this split's going to work with Warren. I mean, everybody always wants to crown those type of guys, the next Austin Eckler, I guess. And, sometimes those guys are just better in a complementary role, as we saw with Tony Pollard last year. He was better when he was the 1B and not, just the workhorse. So I think Jalen Warren will see a little bit of a bump, but I think he'll still be in a similar role as last year. And yeah, still worth a flex play each week, but not necessarily a plug and play running back.
I think the best thing, for the Steelers is going to be the worst thing for us. And just like you said, it's going to be that complimentary back of just either a 1-2 punch or a 1-2-3 punch with Cordero Patterson going there, who's probably just going to play a lot of receiving there. But yeah.
All right, on to the receiving court. We got George Pickens returning. We got Roman Wilson, their new rookie, Van Jefferson, and a lot of hype has been coming out around Calvin Austin. I'd say these are probably really the only four. Calvin Austin, to me, is not worth the hype that he's getting. He might be their return guy, but with return specialist Cordell Patterson, I don't see him doing that this year. So I'm out on Calvin Austin. But George Pickens, I'm very much so in on. He's coming off the board kind of later. I think he's coming around in the 20s. I would love to have George Pickens. He came on strong last year. Deontay Johnson was the target earner, and George Pickens was kind of the, hey, let's chuck it up to him down the field guy. When towards the end of the year, he started seeing the more intermediate of the field. They were drawing some stuff up to get the ball in the hands. We saw him win some championship weeks. So the fact that he came on strong, I think he's going to have a big year.
Yeah, I was coming out, I was a little skeptical on him just because it didn't seem like he had a full route tree. And, he still didn't fully last year, but he was just blew up so big. He does have that alpha profile, and I think that offense, I'm not a fan of Arthur Smith, but it can't get any worse than Matt Canada. So, yeah, and it can't get any worse than Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph and whoever else, Mr. Trubisky. So, yeah, I think, and his skill set meshes with Russell Wilson, the deep ball, those kind of sideline 9 routes. And I think if he can add that intermediate to even short part to his game, which especially with Deontay Johnson gone, there's a need for that big time. I think if you can get him for a late first, which maybe that ship has sailed on with the hype around him, but even in that 108 range, I would maybe still be doing that, because this time, he could be the Nico Collins of this year, where next year we're looking back and like, yeah, this guy's like top 12 pushing at this point.
Yeah, I think everyone sees Roman Wilson kind of stepping at the wide receiver too. I think Van Jefferson's going to come in and be, the wide receiver 2 for the first half. And once Roman Wilson kind of steps into his own, he'll kind of take over that role. But, he still does have some learning. His route tree is not as big. So Van Jefferson has experience on his side. I still don't foresee any fantasy relevance coming out of Van Jefferson truly, because he still is just an okay wide receiver 3. So Roman Wilson definitely has some upside. I like what he did out of Michigan. He just didn't have a whole lot. So the fact that he might take a little bit more to kind of expand on his route running and getting a little bit more of a better route tree and kind of adjusting to the NFL here, I think we'll see him expand later in the year. All right, and on to the tight end. We have returning from injury this year, and I think the only relevant one is Pat Freiermuth. Definitely a guy you can get a huge discount on. Pat Freiermuth is someone that I have liked for a long time. He didn't play. I don't know if he played really 2 games last year.
12.
What? He did not.
Yes, he did.
Their offense was so bad, it just seemed like 2.
That is about right, yes. But he did, in fact, play 12 games.
It did seem like he was on and off injured constantly, but, I not to step on what you were maybe going to say, but I feel like he's the locked in number 2 option in this offense, and I think he could be in line for a lot of targets this
Agreed,
year.
100%. I am quite high on him this year in that offense.
He had a 30-point game last year. I don't know if people forget this or not, but and honestly, he had, 2 touchdowns, which, a red zone threat has kind of been his calling card going back to college. So, if he can get in an offense that's actually in the red zone to begin with, there's definitely some positive regression to be had there. And then he only had 3 games of 5 or more targets. I mean, there were a lot of, 1s and 2s in there. So I think he's just a screaming buy at the tight end position.
Did I say he played in 2 games? I meant he only had 2 fantasy relevant games. Jeez, guys, you weren't hearing what I was saying. You didn't hear that.
Sure, we weren't hearing what you were saying.
So definitely a buy this year. I like him a lot. I mean, in years past, he's actually been pretty relevant. He finished as the tight end 8 in 2022. And so, I mean, I think he can return to at least that. So in deeper leagues and in tight end premium leagues, if you need a solid guy that you can plug in and play here and there, I think Pat Freiermuth is a perfect option to go and buy cheap.
Yeah, for me, I think it's the perfect guy if you're in need of a starting tight end or even a backup tight end. That he's the perfect guy to go get. I think it's worth whatever you're gonna have to pay. But I mean, if you can get him for cheap, and most, I think people just kind of forget about him or just real low on him. I mean, it can't get any worse than Kenny Pickett. And as much as people think that Russ was cooked last year, I think, in my opinion, he proved it's not totally over, and he's gonna get him more than whatever he was averaging targets per game. It's going to be a lot better.
Yeah.
I would just say if you're going to get him now, because I think as we get into the training camp, the hype will start to tick up there, especially if he's one of the top 2 options.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys. Well, that is the AFC North. Next week, we're going to break down the East, and we'll be back for another fun week. I am your host, Colton. Have a good one, y'all. Wade, you want to hit us with a sign-off?
Take her easy, everybody. Talk to you all next week.
Hey, and if she's easy, take her twice.
You're going to have to edit that out.
I had to say it at some point. I mean, you just kept saying it. Grant, you want to hit us with the final sign-off, man?
Would that be adios?
Adios, amigos.